How do you portray a lady when you're a dude, or vice versa? Today on Out of Character. Hi, and welcome to Out of Character. I'm Jason Corley.
I'm Don Dem.
And I'm Jerry Creason.
And assisting us today with engineering is Aaron Lee Newbern.
Hello.
And today, before we jump into our topic, I wanted to give a shout out to Josh Mannon. He goes by JB Mannon on Twitter. If you're not following him, he has a lot of cool stuff to say about games. And he said about this show that he keeps listening to it in hopes that it's eventually going to get good. Now,
well, he keeps listening though.
Exactly. I was going to say, I'm not proud, Josh. So I'm glad that you're still listening. We'll take a listener any way we can get.
But now I feel guilty because I've never heard of him because I don't tweet. I don't have a fancy.
Well, here's one thing that he is doing. He is from his label, which is At the Table Games. He's creating Within the Devil's Reach for the game Dungeon World.
Okay.
Which is itself, it was really the big hit of this year's, I think, Gen Con. Because it's the dungeon crawling hack for Apocalypse World, which is a post-apocalyptic game, and it's really interesting. I haven't played it yet, but I'm very interested to see it. So thanks for listening for whatever reason, Josh. So today's topic is...
I'm thinking, we want to know your reason to listen.
That's right.
So I'm waiting for it to get good. That's a good reason.
It's good enough for us.
Yeah.
So how do you portray a lady when you're a dude, or vice versa? Now, this is a question that has come up a lot on the internet, and I can remember people arguing about this in gaming clubs when I was in high school.
You're talking about in-game, right?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
You can't play a boy, you can't play a fighter, you're a girl. Why don't you play something girly?
Yeah, there's a lot of girly classes in D&D, I've noticed.
No, not quite.
Not really.
You kind of got this weird sex thing anyway inside of a lot of games, because especially if they're period...
Right,
you know, it's
historical games
during the you had these very clear gender roles, and that kind of puts you in a weird little position.
So Don, you were telling me before the show started that there are times when you get a little uncomfortable.
I'm a little freaked out. Yeah,
tell us about that.
Playing a girl is it's see, I'm not a girl, so it's very much outside of my comfort zone when it comes to roleplay. And I think actually... now,
you're not a 500-year-old elf either, or a 2,000-year-old vampire.
That's true, but sometimes I can identify with them.
Okay. But a woman is just too alien.
It's too alien, exactly.
Now,
it's too
Is
different.
it out of your comfort zone to have a player in your group playing an opposing gender character, or are you just...
No, I don't think so. I think it's weird because I think I'm a little bit uncomfortable in sexual situations inside of the game.
In general.
Well, in general, depending upon what situations.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. It's you can role play and call it a girl all you want, but flirting with a guy across the table is a little bit freaky to me.
Okay.
And I'm this is a confession. I really like to pride myself, and that I can really push those boundaries of role play. But to be honest, it's sometimes I get a little uncomfortable with
and I'm sure
situations.
that there's a lot of that. In other role-playing groups. And do you think that it has to do with just general homophobia, or is it just something that...
Well, there's also, maybe, but there's also a little bit of just disconnect in the things that I'm interested in are very masculine.
We just need to get you in touch with your feminine side, Don.
You can touch me. I think that if we are, there's just things. It's like, how do you portray a woman is tough because there's those two very obvious stereotypes, right? You can either portray her as being very slutty or being very cold as ice,
or
but there's a lot more depth.
Girly. Or too girly.
Sure.
So the Madonna whore complex is what you're saying. That's the only way. That's the only way to play women.
Joss Whedon is such a master. He has some very strong, compelling female characters that, even to watch his shows, it's like, I don't know. I think the trick is to if you're gonna go down that route, is to put an aspect to your character that's more than just female.
Right.
Because so many times. You have, I'm playing a female character, and female is the aspect. When truth is, that's just a gender.
And that's
you have
what
to give
my
them more
husband
depth
was saying.
than that.
He said instead of playing a gender, pick a character, and the flavor of that character should be the gender, not the gender itself. Should be what you build your character around, because there's all sorts of stereotypes that some people find offensive and are just completely wrong and don't mesh very well with the group dynamic. So don't worry necessarily about the gender right up front. Worry about the actual character specifically, and then work the gender bits in around it.
Right, that makes sense.
Well, and as someone who's habitually the GM in the group, to me it's weird to have any kind of hang up about playing a male or female character because I have to portray the entirety of the rest of the world.
But I don't know why, but that's different.
Why is that different?
Because you can play to the stereotypes a lot stronger as a GM.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because I want to have characters with flair and pizzazz, and I don't mind stepping in for a few seconds and just doing something crazy. One of my favorite scenarios is actually the farmer's daughter scenario.
It's because
I've done it. I've
NPCs
seen it done.
are safe. It's like meeting a stranger on the street. You're more apt to be, a little bit different than you normally would with your friends because you're never going to see them again, ever. You're like, I don't care what they think of me. I'm never going to see them again. So
and
NPCs
you can give
are kind
your
of like
NPCs
that.
some variety.
Right.
I'll make them crazy. I'll make them whatever is right for the scene. But I do want to get across the farmer's daughter thing because I think this is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and it's a fun way to bring in a character, especially if you've got somebody in your group, and I know you do, that likes to hit on all the females.
There's always that guy.
Yeah.
Don't be that guy.
Sometimes I am that
Giving
guy.
them the farmer's daughter.
Sometimes I'm that guy, but don't be that guy.
Giving them the farmer's daughter is a clear way to bait a trap because now there's conflict all of a sudden. Yeah. And farmers, the overprotective fathers are funny NPCs.
That actually happened to us several game sessions ago, and one of our characters is now getting married.
Nice.
I find it interesting that you seem to conceive of female characters primarily in their sexual aspect.
Yeah.
Primarily. There's
a lot more to the female experience than that.
Than just sex.
For one thing, only getting 7 gold pieces out of every 10 that a male adventurer obtains.
Oh, my bleeding feminist heart. It hurts.
That'd be actually, there's a glass ceiling to adventuring as a female. I can see that.
Don, let me challenge you a little bit. Of course, this is the dog pile on Don episode.
Yeah,
because,
absolutely.
We played a game in which I was the GM and I played your girlfriend, your French exchange student girlfriend.
And that was fun.
So what is different if I instead say Jerry had been running the game and I had been playing Marie-Ange Colbert as my character? Would that dynamic have been the same? Would you have enjoyed it as much if Jerry had been GMing a game, an X-Men game? You're your flamboyant rock star mutant character.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Why is it different when I step out of that GM role?
I think it's maybe actually that's a good question because maybe it's not because you're a guy. You know what I mean? Maybe it's just the portrayal of the artificial sexual thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm destined not to be an actor.
Would it be?
At least not a very lucky actor.
Would it be different if I played a dwarf fighter? Something I've always wanted to do. Would it be different flirting with me if you were the GM and we were all in a tavern and I happened to be flirting with the tavern wench?
Right, and you were playing the wench.
And you were playing the wench, or if you were the GM and you were playing the NPC, and we're flirting, but even though we're opposite gender, playing opposite gender, does that still?
That just sounds like an exercise we have to do.
So you love it, is what you're saying.
It sounds interesting, but maybe it's just because it's fun flirting with Jerry.
That could be.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting. I don't know, but
I guess I should mention that there's a huge contingent of role players that have absolutely no trouble with this, and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of them right now are playing cross gender. They are just doing it on online.
I'll
boards.
do that. I'll do that first.
You'll do that in text. In text or online.
Well,
Why is that?
I don't know about text. Well, because they're pretty to look at.
Well, wait, what are you talking about?
Well, and I also separate, to me, an MMO, right? An online.
That's what I was talking about.
Multiplayer game.
Yeah.
Totally different than a role-playing game.
Okay.
All right? A role-playing game, a tabletop role-playing game is where you role-play.
Is it
an MMO is where you log on and shoot.
Okay. Well,
right. I don't get my role-playing fix from
let's
online.
Say there's that aspect, but it's also, I think, more along the lines of sort of watching a visual book, because you have all of these make-believe characters that are technically in your head. You can just see them on a screen. Versus
an MMO was not what I was talking about at all. What I was talking about is the thousands and thousands of 12 to 20-year-old boys and girls that are logging on to play Harry Potter characters right now on play by forum games.
I would love to play Neville. He's my favorite.
So there are girls that are playing boy characters and vice versa, and they are, all ages, but primarily that age range. And they're playing it in text. They never will see each other face to face. One lives in Schenectady and one lives in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. They're posting as their characters on these online games, and it's happening in numbers that far outstrip what you describe as tabletop role playing. So I think that there's a certain distance that being online gives you. Like I don't look at you when I type in and I describe what my female character is doing.
I think it might be easier if I was to write a story.
Okay.
Right? You could separate, you could get into this character, and I think maybe in a forum that might be the same kind of thing. Whether you call that distance or what you do. I think maybe in role playing it's a little bit too personally. If there's a flirtation thing going on there, I feel that. Because I'm a method role player, so to speak. So it might be a little bit weird, whether that's because of I don't.
Aaron, what's your view on this?
Well, as someone who has at some point or another been both genders,
okay,
my feelings on playing across gender, the one thing that I feel makes that rather difficult and that really needs to be addressed is most of my experience with other role players is, male players playing female characters. And two things arise which, piss me right the f*** off. One is that a lot of times I'll see, the hypersexualization of characters. These 15-year-old role players, women are there to have boobs. And also, did they mention the boobs?
Right.
The other problem, though, is the issue of someone of a privileged community stepping into a non-privileged role and not understanding it. There is occasionally the problem of appropriation. The reason it irritates me is it's the same reason why I occasionally raise an eyebrow when white and especially white middle to upper class people play African American or other disenfranchised characters. There is the issue of a lot of people they
fall into playing the stereotype.
They fall into playing the stereotype, and B, they use it as an excuse to justify weird social things outside of the game. It's like it tends to correlate sometimes.
I can't be racist. I played a black guy one time.
Exactly. I can't be sexist. I played a woman.
There you go. Yeah.
That's sometimes what it boils down to.
I did play a transsexual transvestite one time. I've brought that up before.
From Transylvania?
That came up. That was probably the case. But no, and I played that to the hilt. I mean, I hit every stereotype and, oh, honey, and
but you use stereotypes quite a bit in your games.
Yeah.
Stereotypes.
For some reason I loved that character. It was easy for me to slip it. I think it's because it was so absurd that
Well, and that's a question that a lot of genres. A lot of genres that are popular in gaming have very stereotypical roots, like pulp fantasy, like D&D, pulp, horror, like Call of Cthulhu. All of these use stereotypes, often blatantly racist or misogynist stereotypes. So, to a degree, those are already in the roots. That's kind of in the DNA of the game. So,
it's storytelling endeavor.
Exactly. So, I think we have to be aware of that when we play, and obviously we don't want to replicate it as the concerns that Aaron brings up, but I think that there's a lot that can be added to the experience. Obviously, as a GM, I love doing it, so for me, it's perfectly natural, because I have to do the whole world.
Right.
But if you're identifying a little closer with your character, as Dawn does, it can bring up a lot of issues, I think.
Okay, well, I think people get confused between gender and sex, which are two completely different things. If you have an idea for a character that is a different gender, play the character. Don't play the gender. And definitely don't play into the sex. And unless there is something part of that character that that may bring that element in, but it shouldn't necessarily be the core.
Yeah.
So play the character, don't play the gender. And
I think there's a lot more to say about this.
It'll work itself out.
I think there's a lot more to say about this. This is definitely a topic we'll come back to. So if you've had experiences with playing someone of your opposite gender or sex or orientation or whatever it happens to be, talk to us about it on Twitter or on Facebook. You can post in the show notes on YouTube or on pulpgamer.com. And we'll hope that you join us next time when we'll talk about how do you get players to buy in to a new gaming experience.
PulpGamer.com